Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another hand review, and today I want to talk about when to slow play and when to fast play. I found this fun hand in our private Discord group, and of course when you buy the Mastering Live cash game course on Raise Your Edge, you get access to this group and you can post your hands or ask general strategy questions. So let's get into it. So yeah, we have pocket nines, fun player limbs, we go ahead and ISO to $10. I think with the super weak pairs we should just complete in the small blind and yeah, play 300 with a fun player most of the time, and even against the big blind raise we can call with our small pairs. But the small pairs play really poorly out of position and most fun players are not overfooling post flop, so it makes sense to isolate a way tighter range out of position. So when we're on the button, of course, we can either raise most pairs, maybe all of them against one opponent, especially when he's a weaker player. But in the small blind or in the big blind, you really need a way stronger raising range. So here we make it $10. When he is a recreational, he loves to see a flop. I also don't mind a slightly bigger sizing. So we play 1-2, as you can see here. Yeah, I think also something like 14 or 16 is totally fine when we know, okay, the fish just don't cares and he's calling anyway, so we get more money with the best pre-flop hand in the pot, and the more often we do this, the more we'll win in the long run. But yeah, something changes now. Big blind goes ahead and 3-bets, and here it's important to realize that in those situations most players have a fairly strong range because they also want to play as many pots as possible with a fun player, and when they call, the fun player will usually also call. This is really important to understand. So his big blind 3-bet range is definitely stronger than usual, and yeah, unfortunately the fun player folds and it's on us. With pocket nines against the perceived really strong 3-bet range, it makes no sense to 4-bet and get it in. 4-bet fold with nines would be nonsense. Most of the time we want to 4-bet a really strong holding, so I like queens, kings, aces, maybe jacks, 10 sometimes, and a bluff, right, that is not strong enough to call here out of position, so maybe a hand like ace jack offsuit. And with a middling type hand you always want to call, and yeah, nines is definitely a middling type hand. So we call and we bink the nuts. The first thing, always check to the preferred raiser when your head's up. And yes, he can check back, but I mean, you have a set, right? What are you afraid of? When he has a diamond draw, when he has queen jack, when he has king queen, he's always betting flop. So it's never a problem when your opponent checks back flop. Just give him some room to bluff with random crap like ace king, king queen, whatever. And if he has a strong hand, for example he has aces, he's betting all the time. We get it always in on the flop or on later streets, depending on if he's ripping it in on the flop against our raise or if he's just calling our flop raise. But that's not the fact in this situation. The question is, should we raise this flop and why? And here it's important, you have to think about your whole range, how you want to construct it. Of course, when you just look at the way, well, I have a set, what should I do? Sure, you can always raise, right? Why not? So at first, this board definitely hits our range also fairly well. We can have all the nutted hands, we can have 10s, we can have 9s, and 10-9 suited, pocket 3s. We are never ISOing and we are not calling a 3-bet, but our opponent also never 3-bets a hand like pocket 3s. I would say overall this board is even a little bit better for us than for him, because usually he's 3-betting 10s and 9s, but given that the fun players in the pot, I would assume that he's at least calling with some of those combinations. And the same applies to 10-9 suited, definitely not 3-betting all the time here with a fun player in the hand as well. And of course protection is important here, and you should always think about both ranges. So your value range and your bluffing range. And when you realize, oh, I have 0 bluffs on this board texture, then you should probably also call with all your value hands, right? On some board textures, you definitely want to proceed and yeah, only have a check call and no check raise range. But this board texture is different. We have a lot of draws. We want to check raise with a lot of draws. And when you check raise with a lot of draws, you should also check raise some strong hands. What are the strongest hands? Well, we already discussed pocket 10s and pocket 9s and 10-9 suited. So the hand that needs the most protection is definitely 10-9 suited. So I think with this hand we can just check shove or check raise. I mean, pot is already super big. Even check shoving is totally fine given the stack to pot ratio, because even when we raise, we have to make it fairly big. So I'm just thinking, so pot is 62, he bets weird sizing like 40% here. Probably betting smaller or bigger on most board textures. That's just a little bit easier strategy wise. But he bets 40%, and as you can see, pot is already 90, so don't really mind just ripping it for max full equity. And again, when he has a strong 10 or a better hand, so king 10 suited, ace 10 suited, maybe super low frequency, because like I mentioned, fun players also in the pot, and then he has all the jacks, queens, kings, aces. That's a lot of combinations. So 10 unsuited, probably always ripping. 10s and 9s, so with 10s is a little bit worse to shove on the flop or to raise against his raise, because when we have 2 10s in our hand, there's only 1 10 left, right? Because only 4 10s are in the whole card deck. So the chance that he has a hand like ace 10 or king 10 decreases, and it's much more likely that he has a hand like king queen or ace king or ace queen or ace jack, and he's folding to our raise. That's the reason why we want to check call a little bit more often with top set and a little bit less with middle and bottom set. And as you can see here, we clearly have middle set, so this is definitely a nice hand to go ahead and check raise. And this is also what Hero did in this hand. And yeah, sizing wise, like I mentioned, really don't mind raising a little bit bigger. And sometimes this will happen, right? Your unknown friend in the big blind will just go ahead and fold, but that's no problem. Sometimes he has air, right? And when he has nothing, he's probably just folding. So always think about your whole range and how you want to construct it. So for example, in this hand, we definitely want to raise all our combo draws. So hands like king queen diamond, hands like 7-8 diamond, jack 8 diamond, stuff like this. Maybe occasional some ace high draws as well, and that's probably about it. Maybe like queen jack spades also with some frequency, but we have a bluffing range. This is really crucial, and we have a lot of draws on this board texture that we could check raise, and he's also sibling this board a little bit too often, the vast majority of the time. And sometimes when we check raise and he folds, he has nothing, but even when we call, he's super often just giving up on this board texture, because it's not the best board texture to barrel on, because we will continue on a lot of turn cards. So we definitely want to raise the strongest hands. Again, when you know your opponent is a huge barrel station, I would go ahead and call with pocket 9s more often. But of course you always lose some value when the turn is a bad card and villain has his top range. So our opponent has like king 10 suited plus, and the turn is an ace, a king, even an 8, jack, queen, diamond, kills the act a little bit. And that's the reason why we definitely want to still slow play some hands. But as soon as we know, okay, he's super barrel happy, very over aggressive, especially on turn cards that he's betting nearly his whole range on those scare cards, and he's following through on the river, yes, then I would just check call all my 9s and 10s, probably just check raise my 10 unsuited, and even this is questionable. But against a standard opponent, you should at least have some sets in your calling range, otherwise your turn range is so weak, because you can never have a strong hand when the turn bricks, so you can just bet really large on the turn and you only have a bluff catcher. That's definitely something we never want. So make sure to always include some strong hands in your calling range as well. And like I mentioned, when you have a board texture where you have 0 bluffs, okay, no problem. Then you just have a check call range, and then you should probably have a turn bluffing range and a turn value range. Also make sure to always adapt to your opponent. So when you think, oh, he's super value heavy, he's never c-betting flop with ace king or ace queen, he's a huge unit, he always has queens, kings, aces, he can never fold. Alright, no problem, just check jam. No one likes folding over pairs. In live cash you always get paid, so try to get stacks in as fast as possible. Alright, I think that's it for this hand. I hope you have some ideas now when to slow play and when to fast play. If you have additional feedback, just post in the comments, and I'll see you next time.